Today we're going to break down and analyze the body language of Colt Gray. He's the fellow that shot up a school in Georgia. And as we do this, you're going to get like a backstage pass to seeing the things that the police didn't see, seeing the things that the people at school didn't see, and his father didn't see. So that's why this is going to be a fascinating episode for you. Greg, why don't you tell us about the videos we got?
Yeah, so in September of 2024, this kid shot up a school. He shot 11 people, 2 students and 2 teachers were killed and 9 others injured. He was taken into police custody and charged with 4 counts of felony murder, and his father, Colin Gray, who was also in this video, was charged with second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter because he bought a gun for this kid. Now, what we're going to watch now is in May of 2023, these guys went out, these agents went out from the Atlanta field office of the FBI and some local officers and talked to this kid because they had read that he was going to shoot somebody up on Discord. That's what we got.
That's the worst part about it. I don't know
what information, yeah.
The information came in.
These are good dudes. Just they're told.
Hey, Colt, what's going on, bud? So did your dad kind of explain everything to you?
Said something about school
Shooting up a school.
Did you say something about school shooting?
Never. I just told him, I don't know what. Maybe they misheard somebody else. I would never say that. I would threaten. I would shoot.
You never ever said.
No, I swear.
Do you use Discord?
Discord?
Yes, sir.
I used to. I don't have it anymore.
When's the last time you used it?
Oh man, like a few months ago.
Really?
Was it at Traditions, or was it here?
No, it was at Traditions because that Discord account that I had deleted it before because
Before you moved here?
yeah, because I think it got it had been password pulled or something. Like I had clicked on a link and somebody.
Have you heard anybody on Discord when you were using it say something like that? You remember?
Like at that time?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think I ever had anybody that.
Never. And I mean, I'm not trying to get anybody hemmed up, but like this is some serious stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, he knows how serious it is. Trust me.
'Cause I'd hate to, my boss was even like, I don't know how old this information is, and if you want to wait till Monday to follow up, I was like, no, I'd rather do it now because
So would we.
God forbid something happened and I didn't do my job. I'd feel pretty bad about that. So I just want to make sure you understand that if something like that happens or you hear something like that, report it.
Yeah.
Tell your dad.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
All right, so right away, he's grabbing the door frame. He grabs the chair for security. He's kind of hiding behind the chair. He's avoiding eye contact. There's genital protection where we do this thing over our groin. Some people in body language call this the fig leaf gesture. Then there's the arm swing going back and forth, just trying to burn off energy. Then the hands go into pockets. And there's 3 ways we can put our hands into our pockets that convey different information. So when they enter the pockets all the way, there's typically a lack of confidence and sometimes insecurity. And we tell you all the time to look for these clusters. And just in the first few seconds of this, it's a humongous cluster that spells out insecurity and lack of confidence. And the swaying that we're seeing here in this video is an expenditure gesture. It's burning off adrenaline. It's too much for the body to handle at the moment. And this is nervousness. Then he repeats part of the question about the discord. This behavior is really concerning because there's a pile of clusters here. So when you see this behavior like this, all by itself, somebody repeats a question all by itself, and there's not some giant mountain of other things, it's probably innocuous. But in a situation that's serious like this, it's time to go all in. This is where you would really calmly make a confrontation and launch into what we call interrogation mode, especially in situations like this. So my company, which is called Applied Behavior Research, if you didn't know, built a badass system for predicting the likelihood of school violence happening, and we made it free for anybody. You can download it. I'm going to put it down there. You can just take it in the description. But remember that it gets updated every quarter based on new research and new data from the FBI and other sources. So if you know anybody in education, you can download this and give it to them. That's all I got. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so totally agree. The child here is barriered behind that kind of doorpost, essentially. But the father guides him out. So the father sends out the kid first. He then barriers behind the chair. The father removes the chair. So we've got a father here who's potentially not being particularly protective of the son in this situation, is removing all those barriers that the son wants to put there. What else do we get? He therefore puts the focus directly onto the kid. I believe in this video, he sits down pretty soon, focuses on the kid. Well, of course, yes, they have come round to talk to the kid, but in some ways to then put the kid right out front, it's an interesting position for a parent. We get, Greg, what you might call chained elephant happening there. Now, we've got to put in the possibility that and I say possibility, that you often get that kind of swinging side to side or backwards and forwards with ASD. Might it be that? Well, it might be, but it also might exactly be what Chase is talking about there, which is the expenditure of energy. So all the time we're trying to pick up what are the other clues that go with it. Let's see how much that swinging from side to side continues. Let's look at the father's response to that, because the father knows the kid. What's the father doing around that? And the hands buried in the pockets. Look, everything that you were talking about there, Chase, just one other idea there for the swinging from side to side. I frankly don't think it's likely to be that. I'm not seeing some other indicators there, but we've always got to put them in, because is it stimming? Is it self-stimulation going on? Let's check it out as we move along. Already for me, interesting what the father is doing around this son who's in a vulnerable situation, talking to the police. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, so let's also give him the benefit of a doubt, because if I walk up and I say, hey, you little shit, are you going to shoot up a school? What do you think a kid's going to do? He's going to feel stress, and he should feel stress. Anytime a police officer is involved in a young child's life, this is a kid who's 13. That kid should feel some stress. If he doesn't, I'd be concerned as well. So all this stuff we're talking about, Chase, I love the fact you're pointing out all these clusters. I bought a handgun from a guy one time. You meet up, you have to exchange information, all that. And I remember a really nice gun. It was reasonably priced. And I asked this kid, he was about 21, did you shoot anybody with this kid? And you can imagine coming from me how this kid took that. You could see him just go pale and everything. And I was like, I could tell the kid hadn't done anything. But imagine if you're in the position where someone is older, has more presence, has a gun, all that kind of stuff is going to cause you to jack up. So we expect it. What we don't expect are a couple of deceptive behaviors. Now, when we say there's no such thing as body language of deception, I'm not talking about body language. I love he's doing the sway, the chained elephant, because we can watch it for cadence and see shifts. There's something, and when he says something about shooting up a school, that's a Southern, very much a Georgia speech pattern. So I'm not going to take anything away from that. But, so he's stressed, he's adapting, he's got low eye contact, all that might be a 14-year-old, but he has a feigned misunderstanding and repeat of discord. When he says discord, like he doesn't know what it is, that means he's avoiding a guilty knowledge topic. That's a problem. That's what we saw with Santos. If you guys remember, he does it all the time. He'll avoid the content that matters and it will make him look bad. Then there's a pause and and I don't have it anymore. That's interesting. So why are you doing that? Why would you avoid and then distance? And then suddenly he knows a hell of a lot about Discord. He starts talking about it getting hacked and all that kind of stuff. He didn't even know what Discord was at the beginning of the question. That for me is a red flag. That for me would have me going, hold on a second, kid. You said you didn't know what Discord was. You're acting like you didn't know what it was. So tell me about your Discord. Tell me about every time you've touched it. I would go after him there. And of course, then you'd see the sway rate increase or decrease. He might break down, but who knows? We've seen this in a lot of people. We see people who are nervous because of authority, but what we don't typically see is them trying to avoid guilty knowledge. I want to talk about something that is really important to me, and I think it's also going to be important to you, and this is your personal information. So right now, it could be in the hands of data brokers. They collect all of our details, like our names, sensitive health records, all of our private information, and they sell this stuff off to the highest bidder. So I found a solution that's been a total game changer for me, and that's Aura. They're the sponsor of today's video. And Aura is kind of like your personal digital bodyguard. And it hunts down these data brokers who are basically making a profit off your private life, and it shuts it down. And I used Aura, And I was shocked to see how many of these brokers were out there selling my info. I don't know if you've ever Googled yourself to see some of this stuff. It's a weird feeling. It's a creepy, weird feeling how much of your private stuff is actually out there. So Aura stepped in, sent all of these opt-out requests for me, just cutting them off at the pass. And a lot of this isn't, I just thought it was about like cutting down spam in your inbox when I first heard about this. It's a much bigger deal than that. These data brokers leave you exposed to hackers that could use that data to break into your social media, your bank accounts, and lots of other stuff. And Aura's like this digital fortress around that and kind of keeps these people at bay. And Aura is super easy to use. And it's a combination of all kinds of stuff like antivirus, a VPN, password management, parental controls. There's even identity theft insurance in there that I started using just like 3 days ago. So it's kind of an all-in-one badass package. Aura works 24/7, giving you protection, and my privacy is invaluable. And I think you would agree that yours is also priceless. You can click the link that's right down there in the description. It is Aura, AURA.com/TBP, as in the behavior panel, to start a completely free 2-week trial. I want you to check it out, and I actually mean it. I am a customer of Aura's, and I hope you can join us in there. Scott, what do you got?
Excellent. All right, I think this is a great example of watching someone try to control their stress, because he's introduced to this stress like immediately. It's like almost like you would be familiar with, Mark, coming out on stage, because he's in the house. His dad said, "Get out here. The cops are here. They want to talk to you." He comes outside. He's just standing there. So we see that's when he starts to going back and forth and trying to get rid of that built up stress and energy. So he's adapting at that point. He's so rigid during all this, as you would be. That's understandable. Understandably, he's really, really rigid, and you can see how high up his shoulders are. That's how tense he is. Now, as we go through these videos, watch how these cops relax him, because they just talk to him like, "Hey, man." It's not like, listen, like you were doing, Greg. Listen here, you little shit. Did you do that? Did you say it's not? They're just talking to him, getting him a little bit more relaxed. So watch his shoulders; they'll slowly but surely start coming down. So that's interesting. If you're looking at a group of videos like this, what's happening in the long term of the whole thing. So his voice at the beginning now, it's really, really strong, and it's really high because compared to the way it is at the end. So that's because when you get stressed like that, your larynx gets stressed because your throat tightens up a little bit. You're trying not to breathe too weird. He's thinking about trying to look normal because he's nervous, and that makes it even worse, because it starts this snowball effect up in your head, and you start thinking, "Am I being nervous?" We get all kinds of emails and comments from people saying, "How is somebody going to know if I'm telling the truth or if I'm lying? Because I get nervous when I talk to normal old people. I'm always nervous." There are differences in these types of nervousness that you're seeing. And when it goes away, when it comes back, when it goes away, and it comes back. So if you're one of those people, don't worry about it. They'll be able to tell if you're feeling nerves because you've done something you shouldn't have, or because you're nervous talking to people. That comes up all the time. So his volume is good. His diction is clean and clear. He's trying to get his message out to make sure these guys believe him. So that's understandable there. Then he starts goofing around with something in his front left pocket, whatever that is, I don't know. And usually when you got pockets for your guy, there's something in there and you're stressed, you're going to goof around with that, be it keys, wallet, whatever it is. So who knows what he's got in his pockets. And we're going to see that rocking going back and forth. We're going to watch it speed up and slow down as we go through these videos as well, because that lets us know that's a great indicator of his stress going up. He's got that energy and just starts going back and forth. And at some points, it gets really small. And at some points, it's really large. And we'll watch him as we go through, and I'll point these out as well. He starts getting sideways and starts backing up against the wall. So they've sort of got him cornered in there. So, and the part about where he talks about where he doesn't know what Discord is, and then he does, I think maybe these guys, they see this and they go, "Okay, hang on with this. There might be something here," because that should have been a fairly short conversation, be able to look at him and go, "I think everything's okay," and then move along. But this lasted a while. So I think they've got a hint that something isn't right, but they're just not sure yet, because there are a couple of red flags in there, but there's nothing definitive that you go, "Okay, something's up. Something's up with this guy." You've got to keep checking it out. And that's what they're doing. All right, we good?
Yeah.
I think that was his phone in the pocket.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's the worst part about it. I don't know
What information? Yeah.
when the information came in.
These are good dudes. Just they're
Hey,
told.
Colt, what's going on, bud? So did your dad kind of explain everything to you?
Said something about school
Shooting up a school.
Did you say something about school shooting?
Never. I just told him I don't know what. Maybe they misheard somebody else. I would never say I would threat. I would shoot.
You never ever said.
No, I swear.
Do you use Discord?
Discord?
Yes, sir.
I used to. I don't have it anymore.
When's the last time you used it?
Oh man, like a few months ago.
Really?
Was it at Traditions, or was it here?
No, it was a traditions because and that Discord account that I had deleted it before because
Before you moved here?
yeah, because I think it got like it had been password pulled or something. Like I had clicked on a link and somebody.
Have you heard anybody on Discord when you were using it say something like that? You remember?
Like at that time?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think I ever had anybody that.
Never. And I mean, I'm not trying to get anybody hemmed up, but like, this is some serious stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, he knows how serious it is. Trust me.
I'd hate to, my boss was even like, I don't know how old this information is, and if you want to wait till Monday to follow up, I was like, no, I'd rather do it now because
So would we.
God forbid something happened and I didn't do my job. I'd feel pretty bad about that. So I just want to make sure you understand that if something like that happened or you hear something like that, report it.
Yeah,
Tell your dad.
I promise I would never say something like
So you haven't used Discord in a few
that.
months,
Oh, no.
and you're saying you didn't say anything like that.
No, the only thing I have is TikTok, but I just go around there and watch videos.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough.
What's your birthday?
He's just gonna do a little report saying that
We
what
talked.
we done in reference to this, and that we talked, and you saying that you didn't say anything like that. And I gotta take you at your word, and I hope you're being honest with me. I'm not saying you're lying, but it's
It's a serious thing. Yeah.
it's not unusual for people to lie to police. Okay.
He's familiar with that too.
Hey, Colin, what's a good phone number for you, sir? Okay.
That's what we're doing.
Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so look, he continues with pretty much the same behavior. I'll be interested to hear from everybody else. Are we getting some differences in that swinging during this? But to most of us watching, or most of you watching, you're going to see pretty much the same behavior from him. What's interesting is everybody else starts to laugh at one point. I think the dad makes a joke, and the officers laugh. The mood changes significantly with the officers and the dad. But the son, the child, doesn't change their behavior at all. They don't lighten with this mood. Now, I know listen, and this is anecdotal. What you're going to hear now is anecdotal. I'm going to say, here's what it's like with my kids. And for many of you out there, you might go, well, that's not very scientific. Well, anecdotal evidence is a scientific way of getting a hypothesis. It is sometimes a scientific way of testing that hypothesis if you don't have any other data set. But certainly, anecdotal evidence is a great way to start with a hypothesis about what might be happening. It's what we call science. So the mood changes here. The mood changes here, but the son doesn't change his mood. Now, that might be because he's not very socially aware. Again, we could go, hang on, we saw the swaying from side to side, could be ASD. He hasn't noticed other people are laughing. He's not picked up on that. Oh, there's another factor potentially for ASD, but still really not enough, is it? What's more interesting is the stress so high for him that he can't tell everybody else has lightened up. He won't lighten up. You can have a joke, but he's still internally, as everybody's been saying, trying to work off this energy of his being caught here. So no change to his kind of baseline here, and no change to the baseline even when everybody else has socially changed. Now, I was going to talk about my kids. For example, when I'm out with my son and my daughter, or they're around the dinner table with us and we've got other people there, I'll notice that they are constantly checking out, like, how's dad reacting to this? How's other people reacting to this? They're constantly checking out what's going on because they're maybe not used to, adult interactions at that level, and they want to know how to respond. We're not seeing the child do that. We're not seeing the child that I can see check out, how's dad responding to this? Oh, dad's laughing. Now, I'm not saying he should join in and laugh, but what I would expect is just an out-breath of some sort, some kind of release that says, okay, I think this is an okay situation. Not getting that at the moment. Constantly anxious in this situation. Now, we could also test the baseline as well. How constantly is he anxious in his general life? I think we'll come to that anecdotally from the father. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. The rocking has changed just a little bit. So it's got a little bit wider, because it's not that he's getting more wound up. It's just that I think he's relaxing, actually, believe it or not. That's why it's getting wider. So because we watch his head kind of tilts as he goes as well. Now, he can't get comfortable. He's trying his best. But again, it's showtime. He's out on the porch. He's on this little stage out there, and he's in the corner. This is like the worst place to be. You've always heard, he's been cornered. We got him cornered. You don't want to make somebody feel like they've been cornered. This kid's been cornered. So he's obviously going to be really uncomfortable. So his sentences are short and they're to the point because he doesn't want to say too much, and he's watching everything he says because he knows everything he says is important. They've got him on this. They know this kid did it, and he thinks they know he did too, but he's still trying to come across like, I don't know what you're talking about. It could possibly have been someone else. So that's where it gets kind of iffy, as he's trying to just bald-faced lie through this. So his voice tone at the same time really hasn't changed much. It's relaxed just a little bit, but not much. The volume's still the same. Everything's still clean and clear. He's really good at that, which is good. And we can't see his facial expressions very well. That's the only thing that bothered all of us about this, is we really can't get a good view of his face and see what's happening. So we really can't give you a lot of what's up on that. I'm sure those officers could see what was happening, but for us, there's really nothing there. I'm not showing any or seeing any red flags that say this kid is violent. I'm not seeing anything that says this kid's going to, freak out and do something. A lot of times you'll have a parent who's overbearing and they really, tighten the screws on the way you live your life and all that stuff, and that can make people flip out. Maybe that's one of the reasons that he did what he did. I don't know. But I think, like you were talking about, Mark, that relationship with he and his father, I think that plays an important part here, and to keep an eye on, because he's not checking his dad. He's not saying, he's not trying to be like his father. When dad laughs, I'm going to laugh too, because that's funny. I don't know what's funny, but I'm going to laugh too. He's not doing that. So, all right, Greg, what do you got?
So I think you do see a little difference. I agree. Not a lot. Mark, you said, look, he goes wider and that slows him down just a little. He's still burning adrenaline. But when they make jokes, I think it for him is that one little opportunity to go, but he doesn't back down. He's a rat in a cage. He's caught, and he knows he's right on that porch. So he's feeling all that duress. That's not the most interesting thing of all to me. That joke was about he knows that people lie to the police. Oh, that's a source lead all day, every day. Well, hold on a second, Mr. Father. How the hell does he know that people lie to the police all the time? Is there an incident that you're laughing about? Did it involve him? Did it involve you? Did it involve your... I would ask a ton of questions around that, because that's a missed source lead and a big deal when you're talking about a kid who has threatened to shoot up a school. The thing we know, I mean, Chase, you talked about earlier about school shooters and that kind of thing, school violence. Often those kids are bullied. Often those kids are picked on. Often they don't have boundaries. They may not understand what use of force is. And they get to a point where it's just rational for them to do whatever they're doing. When I hear something that says he knows people lie to the police and they laugh about it, I wouldn't let that pass. And I'm not beating the cops up, trust me, because when you're sitting there and you're talking to these people, the last thing you're going to think is, I got a school shooter on the front porch. It doesn't happen every day. This was the most lethal school shooting in Georgia history. No one expected this from this kid, probably. But there are indicators here that you should have poked a little harder, should have asked questions. And this can be a training issue. That source lead thing, even for interrogators, for school trained, seasoned, good intelligence interrogators, misleads all the time. This is one that just screamed at me. Chase, what do you got?
I've got a long list of the ones I've missed. When I was so bad that I thought I was good. I had, we all start out with a little Dunning-Kruger. I'll speak for myself. I started out with Dunning-Kruger in that, and I thought I was good enough. And that's how we kind of start everything.
This is going to be good. What do you got?
I agree with you, Mark. The same behaviors are present here. He's secretive, concealing, nervous, and he has the hallmarks of some kind of guilt or stress here. And I thought it was interesting to see the mirroring behavior in this kid here, where he's matching his dad. The silver cross necklace, the muted plain color T-shirt, and recent haircut like his dad has. He looks up to his dad still, or is trying to match him for another reason, maybe. But it's amazing to see. But this might also be the reason that he's unwilling to talk to his dad about depression, anxiety, bullying, or these feelings that he might have about committing crimes. The father's role in this dynamic is absolutely critical. If the father is perceived as somebody who doesn't openly discuss emotions or struggles, kids might feel that these topics are just totally off limits. And I'm not saying there's any culpability. And I cannot imagine what this father is going through. In moments like these, we usually see a person trying to reconcile opposing forces. This is the desire to conform to a parental figure while simultaneously grappling with emotions that are inconsistent with that role model's values or actions. So the dissonance between those two things can lead to secretive behaviors like online comments made by kids or escalating violence. And cognitive dissonance is the most powerful weapon that can be used for good or for bad. And we can see how powerful cognitive dissonance is. And we're going to unpack that some more in the next one. We'll see you then.
Wait a minute. I thought you were going to give us a list of things, man. You said you were going to give a list. That's what I was waiting on. I was like, oh, this ought to be good. Of things when you were interrogating and then missed it or thought something was something that it wasn't.
I could do that. You want to extend the episode to about 4.5 hours?
No, just kidding. No, I thought you were getting.
We don't have long enough.
Because
The problem is you can't
if not,
intelligence
people are
stuff.
going to think I was being a butthole because I was like, well, this ought to be good. I thought you were going to give a list, man, and then tell a story. So I was waiting on that.
Everybody's got a long list.
My biggest was the first. Was hopefully cut this out, but the
I'm
first
leaving
time
it in.
ever,
I'm
you'll
leaving
want
it. It's
to
gotta
cut it
be-
out.
Well, then tell when you can that I can leave in. Tell when I can leave in. Hey, man, I told you when this thing is up, we're not in the other thing.
Okay,
Game
so
on.
the first time I ever interrogated a woman, she cried, and I absolutely said, "Oh, she's innocent." Instantly, my brain was like, "This person is innocent." Every ounce of logic and reason disappeared instantly, and I told everybody, "No, she's fine. You can let her go. She's good."
I don't think I'd have
You know
told
what's
that.
a really common one? When women tilt their head and their eyes dilate and men go, "Oh my God, she's being honest." No, they think she's being seductive, and in fact, she's lying through her teeth. You see that all the time in young interrogators because it's so hard for men to interrogate women.
There's another thing for the people watching it. We tell you, observation is the key. That's what you really got to be observant with, especially when you're beginning to learn about behavior and body language. How many people have observed that Mark has lost some weight? Am I correct, Mark? It looks like you're skinnier because when you went like this, I could tell your jacket's a little tighter there. You lost some weight?
I've lost a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have.
Yeah. Thanks for noticing, Scott.
Yeah, man. Very
And
observant.
when we say observation is the key for that first year doing this, observing yourself is more important than looking at the other person, like my reactions, my feelings, my biases that are just entering in here without my awareness or permission.
Greg,
And
tell that.
you also think everybody else is looking at you the same way you're looking at them when you're learning this. So it makes you crazy when you first start.
So, Greg, tell that story about adapters. How when you're teaching somebody adapters, you take them out, take them to the mall or somewhere with a lot of people, and
Yeah, I do the two shoes. One of my favorite things is the two shoes exercise. Have a person either wear, do two things. I call it the two shoes exercise or laundry day. Wear something you absolutely feel incredibly uncomfortable in, or wear two different shoes and try to engage people so they don't notice your feet. It takes a lot of talent from a good interrogator to engage the person so they don't notice your shoes. And if you're in that laundry day exercise, you feel uncomfortable and you're sitting in whatever open place, constantly fidgeting and doing things. It's a good way to learn to hide your own stuff.
Excellent.
I promise I would never say something like
So you haven't used Discord in a few months,
Oh, no.
and you're saying you didn't say anything like that.
No, the only thing I have is TikTok, but I just go around there and watch videos.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough.
What's your birthday?
He's just gonna do a little report saying that
We
what
talked.
we done in reference to this, and that we talked, and you saying that you didn't say anything like that. And I gotta take you at your word, and I hope you're being honest with me. I'm not saying you're lying, but it's
It's a serious thing. Yeah.
it's not unusual for people to lie to police. Okay.
He's familiar with that too.
Hey, Colin, what's a good phone number for you, sir? Okay.
How's school going? How's school going?
Oh, it's going good here.
About ready to get done with it?
I
For the
actually
year?
already finished. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I finished
When
Friday.
was your last day?
Let's say Sunday, so Friday.
Friday? What grade you going into?
8th grade.
8th grade, almost high school, man.
Yeah.
The last 4 years, really, the last 4 years is what matters.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, I'm just focusing.
Get them good grades, man. It'll set you up for the rest.
Yeah, so look, you all are welcome any time. We take it like dead serious around here, and I just want to make sure that I'd even feel better if you do find out what or where.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can somebody let us know? 'Cause
Sure.
he's gonna be full of anxiety until this gets resolved. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, I'd never really say something related to
Yeah.
school.
So did you switch schools when you moved from
yeah.
Traditions? Where were you going before?
West Jackson.
West Jackson Middle?
Okay.
Okay. Is
Um,
things a lot better now?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. That's good.
Let me grab you one. Can I walk through the grass? I'm gonna grab a car real quick.
Yeah, it's all good.
Are you getting bullied over there at West Jackson Middle?
That's the thing. I wasn't back there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wasn't getting.
Now look, be honest with him about
Yeah.
now in middle school. I told him you were now, and that's
You getting switched out halfway through the school year? Being the new guy?
Yeah, I'm being that while. We moved like 6 times already. So.
Well, my dad was a logger and grew up in the military. We moved a lot when I was a kid.
Well,
So-
in the past schools, I was surprised. I had friends like I didn't even necessarily have a reason that I would say that or anything.
Okay. Well, there's always somebody you can talk to if you need to.
Yeah. Sure.
School resource counselors.
Yeah, and I do talk to them. Yeah, I talk to that counselor quite often.
Okay.
Just let her update her on just how my life's going and something like that.
Yeah. Start looking out, making goals for yourself.
Yeah, I'll do that.
You interested in anything?
I want to be a philosopher. I want to
A what?
a philosopher.
A philosopher.
Yeah, it's kind of out there thing, but that's
Yeah.
what I want to do.
Well, I mean, do what you enjoy. I mean, I did 20 years in the military. You don't have to settle on just one thing.
Yeah.
Did 20 years in the military, retired from that, and been doing this for 7. So
Okay.
you don't have to fit everything inside the box.
Yeah, that might branch out to different things.
No. We got guys at the sheriff's office that are full-time plumbers, full-time police officers, and do what pays the bills.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
This is a great example of source leads. Again, we should really be paying attention to what people say and what they stress their words. When I say a source lead, it simply means I'm talking to you about something and you say, well, the nuclear weapons were in the, okay, I want to talk about nuclear weapons now. We call that a hot source lead. A cold source lead is something that can wait further down the road. When he asked the kid about school, he says it's going good here. He even emphasizes the word here. But we don't hear okay, how was it before? What was going on? Because before is when this discord thing was there. But he's starting to develop some rapport with this kid, and you can see it. He's starting to calm down a little bit. We know the profile of a shooter. We know those guys usually are going to be people who've been bullied, who've been picked on. This chained elephant increases the minute that second officer starts to probe. That second cop, I think, has a better instinct, and he knows something's up. He starts poking him, but then the kid bypasses the bullying as well. There's another source lead in there we just miss around bullying. If you don't poke and you don't dig and you don't tear a scab off, you don't know what's underneath it. It's really hard for people to do. It's not socially normal. None of us are socially normal, or we wouldn't be good interrogators. We can learn to behave a certain way, but every interrogator you meet, one of the biggest things you can tell when you're around Huachuca or any place where they're training interrogators is you can tell the kids who are in that course because they're all awkward socially, because they're using interrogatives, who, what, when, where, why, what else. They're poking, they're prodding, they leave no stone unturned. You may not intend anything by saying something in a sentence, but they can't leave it unturned because they're learning to exploit, to pull information. This is the thing that Pyle and I are always talking about. The number one indicator of a good interrogator is intellectual curiosity. Everything else can be taught. You cannot teach a person to be curious. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And here's why. He says he wants to be a philosopher. Now, that's an interesting trade to get into. What do you want to do, kid? Want to be a philosopher? Intellectual curiosity. The question is who's your favorite philosopher? Because who's your favorite philosopher is going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff around how this kid is seeing the world work right now. Now, a great answer would be Socrates. Socrates is always a great answer for who's your favorite philosopher. A worrying one might be, anybody in the order of Nietzsche or something like that. If you, it's could, and I'll come to that in a second. We more concern should be highlighted when we're in the world of the nihilists. Not that there's anything wrong with nihilist philosophy, but it was a philosophy. It wasn't how you should act in the world. It was one way of viewing the world, along with all the other philosophers who'd viewed the world in many ways. And Nietzsche went, all right, how about we look at it in this way? And what's beautiful about philosophy is you can follow that train and you can go, well, it's one way of dealing with the world, and there are many others. The father then says, so he's bullied, yes, changed schools. So there's potential lack of stability there, changing schools all the time. We hear later on, moved 6 times. Again, lack of stability going on here, potentially. The father says he's going to be full of anxiety. Interesting. So he uses the word anxiety. Anxiety is a word that they're happy to talk about. So somebody else has maybe talked to them about anxiety at some point. Somebody's brought up that clinical term at some point, or certainly, it's maybe a pop term that's being used between the father and the son, way of thinking about it. Okay, so we've already got full of anxiety in there. Okay, look, the cop says to this idea of being a philosopher, it's a lovely idea. You don't have to fit everything inside the box, which is actually a lovely way of looking at stuff. Great words, wise words from the cop there. You don't have to fit everything in the box. But here's the key. You do need a box. You have to have a box in order for stuff to be not fitted in it. You have to know what the box is. If you want to be a revolutionary, you have to know the order that you're revolting against. You've got somebody potentially here, if he is into nihilistic philosophy, and he may well be, that there are no longer any, he's enjoying the idea of there no longer being any objective order. He's moved 6 times. He's not been in the same school. There is no order potentially in his life. And he's also potentially enjoying philosophies which are nihilistic, whereby you destroy all order. Now, that doesn't mean you destroy it like physically. The idea is in your mind, you destroy all order, as well as having all kinds of other ordered philosophies as well in your mind. Anyway, what I love, Greg, about this video is there are so many source leads in there. There's so much information that you can dig into and go, we potentially have a very anxious child here who's interested in potentially nihilistic philosophies, who has very little order in their life and is now reading about the destruction of order. And you've even got a cop picking up on that and going, you don't have to have everything in the box. But remember, from my point of view, you must have a box in order to push against and fall outside of. Without that, you have utter chaos. And in utter chaos, people will do all kinds of stuff, which is essentially illegal and antisocial. Chase, what do you got on this one?
That was great. Fantastic commentary on that, man. I completely agree. In this, we're seeing a lot of the same behavior here, the swaying, reluctance to open up. Keep in mind that police don't get training in this stuff for the most part. They're doing the best that they can do here. And I'm going to talk about the deeper behavior going on here in a way that I think will maybe benefit everybody. As kids grow up today, they're usually going through an identity crisis. They're figuring out who they are. They're trying out kind of costumes, these different ways of being able to see what feels right for who they are. This has always been part of growing up, even in 1950. But now with social media, there's a new layer to this. There's online anonymity, and it gives kids a chance to explore and try on some of these things they might feel too scared about doing in real life. And it feels good in the moment. It's like a release for some hidden emotions. But the downside is that it creates this huge disconnect. It's a cognitive dissonance that can cause very serious problems in day-to-day lives. So they might feel shame or guilt, and shame has all but been institutionalized in our modern day society. But they're even maybe feeling resentment because they have to keep that part of themselves hidden from everybody around them. This can be especially tough if they're dealing with bullying or social pressure. And those, I hate to say this word, but I can't think of a different one, bottled up feelings can come out in really harmful ways. So if a kid keeps representing their emotion or repressing their emotional state, it can go bad. And adults are different in a lot of ways. You won't see emotionally mature or successful people shaming or putting other people down. But when you do see that kind of behavior in adults, it often comes from unresolved feelings like envy or guilt. But in kids, it's more about the mix of emotional turmoil and invincibility that teenagers have. And they don't totally grasp consequences of their actions. This is why things can spiral out of control. And that's the difference between how an adult might do this and how a child might do it. And that's all I got.
All right. Here we're seeing shoulders, as I was talking about earlier, they're a little bit more relaxed. The rocking is slowed down a little bit. And his back is, again, closer to the wall as he's getting back in the corner there. Let's talk about this part where he wants to be a philosopher. And let's talk about some of the things that he may have read and why he may have gotten into this. Okay, here's my view on it. A lot of times what will happen is this. When a person feels isolated and people are shunning them as a group and they're by themselves, they start looking for, then why am I here? What am I doing? What's going on in the world? Am I looking at this the right way? Am I seeing this the way everyone else is, or is there a way to see this? Now, the number one guy in philosophy to do that is Marcus Aurelius. He's the guy, Aurelius. He's the guy what he turns to and goes, okay, I'm starting here. Because this thing almost looks like it looks like and sounds like this is the way you got to do it. And it all makes a lot of sense. There's a fellow named Ryan Holiday. Now, he's re-energized learning about philosophy and learning about the philosophers. And his number one guy is Aurelius as well. So what happens is this. You'll get someone who feels shunned or they feel like they're by themselves. They start looking for this purpose in life. They'll find something. It'll either be a religion, a philosophy, like in this case, or music. And they'll get into that music and they'll find one person they'll think is like, that's it. I'm going to see my way. That philosophy of that musician is going to be my way to live my life. That's going to be my philosophy, how I do it. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. Or I do care about this and I do care about that, whatever this and that are. Okay. So what happens is once they get into that, find that religion, which is what it becomes after a while, in a way, then they see completely the world that way. And if they can't get through that, if they can't stay up with that, if they can't find the rebirth of themselves in that, so they feel okay about the world and understand what's happening, that's when they start isolating themselves from everyone. And they start taking some of these things a little too seriously and they get too deep into it. That's when they think and they get up in their head and they start thinking some nutty, nutty stuff. I think this, for me, if I was standing there talking to this kid, if I was listening to this, that I would have said, hey, man, I would have talked to one of the other cops or one of the agents, said, look, there's something up here. And I would explain to him what I was just saying. I've seen this before. I know not with somebody who went and did some horrible things, but I understand what's happening here with this, when somebody loses their themselves and they're sort of having to start all over and remap out who they are. I've seen that happen. And that's what it looks like. As soon as that kid started talking about that, I could see that in him. Could be wrong, because it's just my opinion. But boy, it sure looks like that to me. So I would see that as a red flag. I would separate one of those guys and say, look, we need to start talking about this, because you talk about a source lead right there. You can get up in there and get up into his head from there and then send him to a pro who can really get up there and find out what's going on. So again, it goes back to training, not being able to see that or not having the wherewithal to say, oh, I see what's happening here. Maybe these guys don't read a lot or aren't into that kind of thing. But that's the way it looks to me. And so for me, this was a big red flag here. That's the one I saw. And I said, there could be a big problem here.
How's school going?
Oh, it's going good here.
About ready to get done with it?
I actually already finished, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I finished.
When was your last day?
Let's say Sunday, so Friday.
Friday? What grade you going into?
8th grade.
8th grade, almost high school, man.
Yeah.
The last 4 years, really, the last 4 years is what matters.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, I'm just focusing some more.
Get them good grades, man. It'll set you up for the rest of
Yeah, so look, you all are welcome any time. We take it like dead serious around here, and I just want to make sure that I'd even feel better if you do find out what or where. Like, can somebody let us know? Cause
sure.
He's gonna be full of anxiety until this gets resolved. I can tell you that right now.
I'd never let's say something related to school.
So did you switch schools when you moved from Traditions? Where were you going before?
West Jackson.
West Jackson Middle? Okay. Is things a lot better now?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. That's good.
Let me grab you one. Can I walk through your grass? I'm gonna grab a car real quick.
Yeah, it's all good.
Are you getting bullied over there at West Jackson Middle?
That's the thing. I wasn't back there. I wasn't getting.
Now look, be honest with him about now in middle school. I told him you were now, and that's
getting switched out halfway through the school year, being the new guy.
Yeah, I'm being that while. We moved like 6 times already. So.
Well, my dad was a logger and grew up in the military. We moved a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, in the past schools, I was surprised. I had friends like I didn't even necessarily have a reason that I would say that or anything.
Yeah. Well, there's always somebody you can talk to if you need to.
Yeah. Sure.
School resource counselors.
Yeah, and I do talk to them. Yeah, I talk to that counselor quite often.
Okay.
Just let her update her on to tell them what's on and something like that.
Yeah, start looking out, and making goals for yourself.
Yeah, I'll do that.
You interested in anything?
I want to be a philosopher.
A what?
A philosopher.
A philosopher.
Yeah, it's kind of out there thing. That's
yeah. Well, do what you enjoy. Yeah. I did 20 years in the military. You don't have to settle on just one thing.
Yeah.
Did 20 years in the military, retired from that, and been doing this for 7. So you don't have to fit everything inside the box.
Yeah, that might branch out to different things.
No. We got guys at the sheriff's office that are full-time plumbers, full-time police officers, and do what pays the bills. Do what pays the bills. Do what they enjoy. But everything's going good.
Yeah, now, yeah. Sure.
Well, that's good. You got a phone?
Do I have a phone? Yeah, I have a phone.
What's your phone number?
Like I said, I changed my phone number.
Okay. All right. Dad said you went deer hunting for the first time this past year.
Oh yeah.
What'd you get?
3-pointer.
3-pointer?
Yeah, it was nothing much, but I still.
Fork on one side and one on a prong on the other, or?
It was one on one side and two, 3
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, fork on one side and one on the other. Spike.
Yeah, fork. Yeah.
Yeah. I've probably seen more one antler deer this year than any other time in my life. Out there in rut and breaking off an antler.
Breaking off the antler.
Run around with just one set of antlers.
Brass about this high here. So, anyways, all right. Well, look, Cole, I appreciate it.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I got just one thing on this, which was really lovely and of interest. So on the big scale, the pattern doesn't change very much again. I mean, there's going to be some slight deviations, but from the grand scheme of things, if you just kind of, put your eyes in the middle distance, it's pretty much all the same stuff going on. Apart from one moment for me where the officer now is doing quite a good job of trying to relax the kid, get a connection. They're talking about hunting. I mean, I understand obviously probably talking about hunting to see, do you have access to weapons? Do you know how to use one? There's an ulterior motive, I would think, and certainly hope. But he's doing it in a really lovely, relaxed way. And we don't see a huge change in the kid, somewhat, but there's a lovely moment where they connect over something about the one of the animals and an observation they've both made, and they both agree on an observation about an animal. I think something about an antler or something like that. I don't, as you can tell, Greg, I don't know enough about hunting. They're like they have 4 legs and they've got lovely tails, and you get a bullet, into them and they fall over. That's as much as I really know. Okay. But a lovely moment of connection by the people who do know what they're talking about on this. And the kid's hand just comes out of the pocket and there's just a lovely little movement in the hand, and then it's back in again. Just that moment of connection, and the kid just loosens up just a little bit. And with your eyes set in the middle distance, you will see that happening as a huge deviation from baseline there. It's a tiny little movement, but it's a huge deviation in baseline against everything else in the general. And from my point of view, it's a positive deviation from baseline. It's saying, I like this guy. This guy is connecting with me in some way. Loved to see that moment. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. Right now, his shoulders, I think, are where they would be normally. I think he's back to his set point for that, because his shoulders are down. If you go look at the first video, and you look at this one, you'll see it's a big difference in there. Keep getting lower as he goes along. The rocking is slowed down, so his stress level is getting lower. So this goes everything you're saying, Mark, about them connecting, and they're talking about deer actually. I think you're talking about deer hunting, and one of them just having one little antler or horn, whatever you say in deer talk. I'm not a hunter, I don't know. So far, this is the most relaxed we've seen him. So remember, he came out earlier, he was trying to control his stress. He's got everything under control now, I think, because they've dropped the coming on aggressively with him. So I think he feels much better about what's happening. And in this, there's really not much information he gives. He doesn't ask any questions. He should, he's being talked to, the cops are talking to him, but he doesn't offer any back and forth there. Usually the person will say, they'll start talking to kind of get a read on things, see how everything's going. He's not giving him information. In other words, he's not saying, well, that doesn't elaborate on anything. Really, really short answers, really, really short answers. And oddly enough, his chin really hasn't changed much, his chin positioning. A lot of times they'll go up or they'll go down, they'll start turtling, they'll have all kinds of things happen. But his head's pretty much stayed the same. And I think that's because he's constantly keeping an eye on him, because he knows that's the attacker. In other words, in this situation, they're not the enemy, but they're the enemy in this situation for him. So I think he's trying to keep an eye on him. And then he's just fidgeting, rocking back and forth, same stuff. And I think he's about over it. I think it's about time he wants us to be over. I think he's had just about enough of it. at this point. So for me, no red flags here. Chase, what do you got?
I think it's called a nub and buck in territory I come from. And anybody who imagines me doing kind of really cool stuff in the military, it wasn't. It wasn't even intellectual. It was gritty, nasty. I was a tobacco chewing, sweaty dude in the Middle East. That's kind of what it was. So that's what it is. Nub and buck, I think, is what they're describing. But right here, we're seeing a very deep need for him to avoid eye contact, which is the case right here. That I think is the biggest red flag for the police. Like, if I could just tell the police one thing, is there a deep need for somebody to avoid eye contact? And that doesn't mean they're guilty. If you judge someone's guilt based off of that, you're an idiot. But it does mean we should be digging deeper. And I know they can't do much within the law here, but it might be a good time to spend a little more time talking with him till his hands come out, or let him sit down. And one of the things I wish all police knew is how to get this done without any awkwardness. If a police officer wants to chat with somebody for a prolonged period, you just need to say that it won't take long, but you have to wait on your partner to get something. You have to wait on an officer to tell you something. It's the same thing you do in an interrogation room. Scott is big on this one. And this builds a ready-made excuse into this for you to sit there and hang out and chat. Until the item or whatever it is you're waiting on arrives. You can finally leave at that point. But this dissipates all of the tension in situations like this. It removes the feeling that you're just hanging around just to chat. It assigns the blame to something else. So it makes everybody more comfortable. It removes the social tension so that people can get more open. And it seems like such a simple, stupid thing, but it is everything. It makes the entire difference. If you need to spend a little time talking to somebody and getting them to open up, that is the thing to do. Seems simple. It's extremely powerful. Greg.
Interrogation is really not screaming and yelling. It's not saying, hey, you little shit. It's none of that. What interrogation is about is creating a brand new Maslow. You guys know what I think of Maslow. It's about creating a brand new Maslow between me and you. And then there's a trust issue. And then it's hard for you to lie to me without creating stress. If you think I'm a scumbag and, an infidel or whatever, it's really easy for you to treat me like garbage because I have no place in your Maslow. And what this guy is starting to do, Mark, to your point, is he starts to connect with this kid. He starts to connect, build some rapport, and get this kid to understand him as a human. But the kid, there's a red flag, in the biggest red flag here, Chase, you're seeing it in body language. I think the biggest red flag here is he doesn't connect. He doesn't connect with people. Every person I've ever known who's committed suicide dissected themselves from their Maslow and became standalone. That is a terrifying thing. I've known lots of military guys who've done it and people close to me, and they usually separate themselves from everything that it is to be normal for them. So when you're talking to somebody that you think might be one of these kinds of people, what you want to do is poke and see, is there a chance to be able to connect with them? If you can't connect, if that guy can't connect, if no one can connect, then you may have something going on that you're looking at. So there's another source lead. Everything is going good now. Okay. How was it going before? I want to know about past history, what's happening, because we're not talking about today. This Discord thing was not today. So I'd want to go and ask that question. Then when you ask a question about a phone, he's awfully evasive about that phone. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't tell you what's going on. The reason I say he's almost there with this rapport thing, he's talking about this buck. And by the way, I think if I recall my lore a little bit, Scott, antlers shed, horns don't. That's the way to remember it.
Huh.
So, deer have antlers, cows have horns. But as you're going in and you're talking to him about this, and you're talking about him about shooting a deer, you could ask him questions. What kind of gun did you use? Is it yours? You got your own gun? That's cool. When I was your age, I had a shotgun. Oh, you got a 223? Okay, interesting. I might want to ask questions that seem non-pertinent, which he's doing a good job of, but that allow me to get a back door to get the information. I think he does connect almost with this kid. And Mark, that's what you saw. You saw that bleed of information that he actually was getting through to the kid. So real shame. I know these guys feel like garbage about this, and I don't think any of us are here to beat them up. We're saying more training is good. More training is helpful always. And even then, it's tough when you're standing face to face with somebody. To Chase's point about missing 400 things when you first start and missing leads. Leads are one of the hardest things to see because you're projecting, you're looking, you're watching hands, you're doing all that at the same time. That's all I got.
do what pays the bills, do what they enjoy. But everything's going good.
Yeah, now, yeah. Shit.
Well, that's good. You got a phone?
Do I have a phone? Yeah, I have a phone.
What's your phone number?
Like I said, I changed my phone number. And
Okay.
I
All right. Dad said you went deer hunting for the first time this past year.
Oh, yeah.
What'd you get?
3-pointer.
3-pointer?
Yeah, it was nothing much, but I still.
Fork on one side and one on a prong on the other, or?
It was one on one side and two, three
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, fork on one side and one on the other. Spike.
Yeah, fork, yeah.
Yeah. I've probably seen more one antler deer this year than any other time in my life. Out there in rut and breaking off an antler.
Breaking off the antler.
Run around with just one set of antlers.
Brass about this high out here. So, anyways, all right. Well, look, Colt, I appreciate it. All right. Well, look, Colt, I appreciate it. Your dad's got my card. If you hear anything, tell your dad. Okay? He's got my number. You can pass the info on.
It's serious. He knows how serious it is, and he'll, like I said, we'll have a long conversation here in just a little bit. And if something, it's a pretty traumatic thing that him and I both went through now. He was at school, I was at work, come home, and I mean, every ounce of what we had was under tarps and sitting in that yard. You saw it.
Yeah.
You saw the clientele, the neighbors that lived there. It was like fully embarrassing. So it was very traumatic for both of us. And living here, just us, is like, dust is finally settled. He's making good grades. So
that's good. We'll keep that up. That's important.
We'll start talking about traditions in West Jackson and just see if something jogs his memory like that. But certainly we'd like to know if you do find.
Well, my thing is this. So more than likely they track the IP address.
Okay.
And that's why we went to that address.
Okay.
Because the IP addresses are usually location specific.
Yep.
Within an area. So if it came from that house, then either somebody there is lying or the information is just so old.
Yep.
And, maybe it was something he heard or did on Discord months ago. I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
So, but he's telling me he didn't.
Yep.
Telling me he can't remember anything like that. And I take you at your word. Okay. If you look me in the eye and you tell me that's what you're telling me, I got no choice but to take you at your word right now. Okay.
Yes, sir.
But like I was telling your dad, if we find out otherwise, then it's a different story. Okay.
It's a really different story. Okay.
Got any questions?
No, sir.
You have any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Appreciate it, sir.
Y'all be safe.
Good luck to you.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
This is an interesting one because as his dad talks about the situation, watch him rock. That rocking, Mark, you were talking about earlier, he gets to a shorter stroke. He's boop, 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 boop. And then as his dad starts talking about him doing better, he's making good grades. That's another lead we miss, as opposed to what? The dust has settled and he is making good grades. What dust? What dust happened? I want to know everything about what we're talking about to get us to this situation. Yeah. I would have leaned over and said, hey, kid, you okay? Because he's looking a little awkward. And for the first time, we see his eyes really go downcast instead of paying close attention. And he does a heavy swallow when his dad's describing the situation. That makes me want to lean over and put my hand on the kid and go, hey, kid, you feeling okay? I know this is stressful. And just try to bond that one more time and see if I can get close. You get more with that than just about anything else you do. Chase, what do you got?
Yep, I agree. By mostly addressing the father, the officer might be unknowingly reinforcing that hierarchy where the kid might feel less inclined to speak up. And this creates a situation where Colt could feel even more withdrawn or invisible, maybe less likely that he'd express some deeper emotions. So officers can say different things in situations like this, and you'll notice the whole conversation glosses over the direct negativity. This is the biggest point of this entire video that you're watching here, in my opinion. We're glossing over the direct negativity, the big thing, and the situation, and we're focusing on shallow surface level issues. So in the future, police talking to kids can say a few things differently. So I'll make a PSA here. Number one, talk directly to the kid. Make them feel like they matter, that their voice is important. Ask about feelings, which sucks. I know it's not instinct for a lot of us, but just get beyond the surface and go into what they're feeling inside. Display some kind of vulnerability yourself and use the waiting on papers or waiting on the email method to do that. And then challenge those denials. Don't just accept no. Make it a little bit okay to admit a little bit more. And next, make consequences pretty real. And you want to use the family as much as you can. Show the kid they've got someone in their corner to encourage that honesty, and use the dad in that way. You might say something like, Colt, your dad's here, and I know he'd want to help you through anything that you're struggling with. And I know he cares about you. If there's something going on, now's the time to say it, because he's here to support you no matter what. And you follow up with something like, Colt, we know the comments were made from your location, and I get that sometimes things are said in the heat of the moment or as a joke. What's more likely is that you were just kind of blowing off steam and you were feeling upset and didn't know how to deal with it at the time. And being honest now could make a huge difference for your future. And if we understand what's going on, we can get ahead of it. But if things come out later, it's going to make everything a lot harder for you. And I don't want that. And I know your father doesn't want that either. That's a direct talking about what happened instead of glossing over it and then talking about deer antlers for half of the time. So that nothing these police officers did was incorrect or bad. They were doing the damnedest best that they possibly could. They don't get a lot of training on this stuff. I'm very familiar with this, and they did a good job. But in the future, if you're ever doing this, a law enforcement officer, that's what needs to happen. Let's go right to that subject and be compassionate about it instead of confrontational. Compassionate, not confrontational. That's all I got. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, interesting dynamic here between the son and the father, because though I think you're right, Greg, maybe the swaying has slowed down a little bit here. It hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped. And we're, in my mind, we're way on with the questioning here. Everything's calmed down here. The swaying is still going on. So why isn't the father going over to the son and going, it's okay. So it's right, calm down. It's okay. We're all right. We're okay. Yeah. You've had your questions and stuff. It's okay. Calm down. The father isn't really looking at the son. And if he has noticed him out the side of his eye, he's not responding to this anxious behavior. And he does say, look, he's going to be full of anxiety. So we must know what anxiety looks like. Now, that starts me again speculating, is this sway from side to side his absolute baseline a lot of the time? Why might that be, if it is? Of course, I'm only speculating here. Well, we could go back to the ASD hypothesis. It could be high levels of testosterone. That will cause you to move around a lot. A young male of that age is going to have a lot of testosterone just starting to come out. Could be a mood disorder. Could be an affective disorder. Any of which, if they were long-term, maybe this is baseline for the father, and that's why he doesn't respond. But even so, the father has said he's worried about his son being full of anxiety and isn't responding to him not, gearing down on this. One parent family, nothing wrong with a one parent family at all, but there's a reality there that you what would often for many be a two-part structure is a one-part structure. So we only have at the moment this father structure to be the element that's going to calm down this son, and it's not happening. Again, I don't know exactly why, because I'm not able to interview this person. I'm reading the behavior, the body language, listening to what they're saying in this moment here, and I know nothing else about it. But hopefully those hypotheses are of interest to you. If you know more about this case, maybe you're going, Mark, yeah, that makes sense. Or maybe you're going, Mark, no, here's why that doesn't make sense. I'm not trying to make it make sense. I'm giving you ideas that come to mind for me. Scott, what do you got on this one?
I agree with you 100%, Mark, on all that, because I think the problem may be stemming from this sounds so cornball, but from his relationship with his father. Because you hit the nail on the head for me. He didn't try to comfort the kid. He didn't make sure he's okay. The kid isn't trying to connect with the father. So we're seeing that separation. They've been separated. They talk about that from the society or whatever, feel by themselves, haven't moved around so much. And the mother isn't there. And then the kid going off to school and being separated and bullied and being isolated that way. And he's not connecting with the kid. So I think that makes it even worse for the kid, because the kid at this point has nowhere to go, which goes back to my point in the philosophy thing. When you try to find your reason for being, and Greg talks about Maslow, you try to find out what's going on there, and you clamp onto something, and that's the way to do it. And the kid can't discuss that with his dad and say, what do you think about this? And he can't say, well, I really, this made a lot of sense. However, you've got to view these other things with it. I don't think he has that connection with his dad to be able to work his way through these things. That's why I think he's so isolated. And maybe that's why his anger just built up and built up and built up at the world, because he doesn't understand it. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe. I think, that's kind of a little jaunt away from the body language part, but from a and I don't know squat about, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not into that. I do read a lot about it, but I'm not, but that's the way it looks to me from the psychological layman, in that would be I would surmise that might be the situation there. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah. And that's okay. We're not the body language panel.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking about behavior.
All right. Well, look, Colt, I appreciate it. Your dad's got my card. If anything, if you hear anything, tell your dad. He's got my number. He's got the info on.
It's serious. He knows how serious it is, and he'll, like I said, we'll have a long conversation here in just a little bit. And if something, it's a pretty traumatic thing that him and I both went through. Now, he was at school, I was at work, come home, and I mean, every ounce of what we had was under tarps and sitting in that yard. You saw it.
Yeah.
You saw the clientele, the neighbors that live there. It was like fully embarrassing. So it was very traumatic for both of us. And living here, just us, is like, dust is finally settled. He's making good grades. So
that's good. We'll keep that up. That's important.
We'll start talking about traditions in West Jackson and just see if something jogs his memory like that. But certainly we'd like to know if you do find.
Well, my thing is this. So more than likely they track the IP address.
Okay.
And that's why we went to that address.
Okay.
Because the IP addresses are usually location specific.
Yep.
Within an area. So if it came from that house, then either somebody there is lying, or the information is just so old.
Yep.
And maybe it was something he heard or did on Discord months ago. I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
So, but he's telling me he didn't.
Yep.
Telling me he can't remember anything like that. And I take you at your word. Okay. If you look me in the eye and you tell me that's what you're telling me, I got no choice but to take you at your word right now. Okay.
Yes, sir.
But like I was telling your dad, if we find out otherwise, then it's a different story. Okay.
That's a really different story. Okay.
Got any questions?
No, sir.
You have any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right. Y'all have a good the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, sir.
Y'all be safe.
Good luck to you.
All right. Well, we've watched these videos and broken down and analyzed the body language we've seen, the behavior. Now we're going to sort of wrap everything up and tell you what we've seen as a whole. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, it is really interesting how this sway from side to side doesn't really end. Be great to see other footage of this individual, to see how they respond to a bunch of other situations. Is that a constant with that person? We know that the rhythms did change, or the cadence did change throughout that. So it's still a really good indicator of what's going on, but really interesting. I don't think I've really seen that throughout such a long amount of video, that kind of consistent, anxious behavior. So pretty interesting there. Look, I mean, I think you can tell from what we're saying, there is an understanding from our point of view that this kid has been dealt, in some ways, potentially a bad hand. However, everybody gets dealt bad hands and some worse. And it's what you do with that hand. It's how you play that hand that really marks out your character and who you are. He's played out that hand in a bad way. People have died. People were injured. It's bad. So we're not saying that this was not a bad actor, because absolutely it is. But we are suggesting, I think, look, there's a terrible hand potentially being dealt out to somebody who can't take who's not responsible for some of those hands. What you do with that hand, yes, you are responsible for that. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, totally agree. And here's my big takeaway here. Kids are not just little adults. They're still trying to figure themselves out. And with the internet, they get to try all these different identities like they're putting on masks. And it's easy to feel safe behind a screen, which can, in a confused mind, translate into everyday behavior. But that disconnect between online persona and who they really are can mess with somebody's head big time, especially a child. So it's emotional turmoil with the teenage sense of invincibility, plus lots of social pressure. And this is a kid caught in the middle of all this. He's trying to balance the chaos that's going on in his life. So if you're dealing with kids in heavy situations like this, don't just go off of the surface. If they're fidgeting, they're avoiding eye contact, dodging questions, give them some room, slow it down, let them talk, and don't settle for a quick no. Sometimes a tiny bit of extra time can make a gigantic difference in the outcome. Greg?
Yeah, a couple of things. I always say to people, I can't tell you how many people I've met who say my kid's hanging out with the wrong crowd. No, your kid is the wrong crowd. Sometimes your kid's the wrong crowd. And you need to be able to say, hey, this has got to stop. And so I'm always saying, this is a tough time in a kid's life. I've been a 14-year-old boy. I can talk to a 14-year-old boy better than most people can because I know what that's like. I remember it being chaotic. I remember it being tough. And every one of us has gone through that. But we always want to pretend like it didn't happen, like we were not uncertain. And you're back now to Chase, back to the operator personality. Real operators don't pretend. They don't have to strut. They're just who they are. And that's what real maturity is. That's what real masculinity is not having to pretend, not having to do all that. You should be able to talk to a kid and make that kid comfortable enough that they can talk to you and they feel somewhat indebted when it's over. And that's a tough skill to have. And cops have a lot of hard jobs, and this is a really hard one for them to do. Mark, you talk about change. The one constant in a 14-year-old is change. You've got kids in that age range, they are constantly learning new things. Their brain's changing. The hormones are, I always say a little boy who's 14 years old, and it's still a boy, I don't care what he thinks he is today, his brain is being outvoted 2-1 by his testicles. It's just our brains are not working normally. We can't expect them to make rational decisions with bad inputs. However, we can't expect them not to be violent, not to do these things. If you think your kid is one of those, you need to pay attention. You need to really pay attention. If you have any question about it, you need to pay attention and start looking at what's going on with them. Here we missed a bunch of things. And you said it dead on, Chase. You should talk about the elephant in the room. And never mind the chained elephant thing. We missed 2 source leads and an evasion here. There's a heavy source lead on bullying. The bullying has stopped. There's also something in there about he had been in trouble. So those 2 things associated with firearms, associated with his evasion, all this kind of stuff, and go back to that discord point. There's a whole lot of red flags going on here that you really have to be trained to be able to see. And I would venture to say most people would only notice the rocking and not the big stuff, not the more subtle things we're actually talking about here. Scott, what do you got?
I really like this one. I think we got to see somebody go from trying to control their stress and all that and going through that process of letting it go slowly but surely, and then seeing someone kind of calm him down. Not his father, who should have helped with that at the beginning, I think, which would have helped him a little bit. But we're seeing all the little things that sort of tell us what the psychological makeup is of this kid, because he's talking about at the beginning when he's lying, kids lie all the time. And then we see him go through the thing of they try to small talk him a couple of times, don't get much out of him from that because he doesn't offer anything up, doesn't really talk much about anything. Then he talks about what he's into, philosophy, he wants to be a philosopher. I just think they should have gone deeper into that, and he really could have connected if maybe this guy doesn't understand, maybe he's not a big reader or anything to understand all that, but man, that was a great place to connect with him and his father as well. If your child's interested in something, you want to be interested in that as well. So you can have that connection with him. I thought this was a really good one. As boring as it looks from a video perspective, just sitting there watching, doesn't look like much is going on. This is what we're talking about. We say you've got to observe properly because, as you've seen, we could see a whole lot in there, and hopefully you'll be able to see things like this more often now as you go through your life and you see things happening. Now, don't forget to download that PDF Chase was talking about at the beginning. We may have a couple of surprises in there with it as well. So, all right, fellas, thanks for another good one, and we'll see you next time.
There will not be a picture of Scott shirtless in that PDF. I'm sorry to say. All right, Phyllis, I think this is a good one.
No, still got to do better.
Yeah.
Still got to do better.
You lean your head forward when you do it, Scott. Just if you want
Oh, okay.
always. You go.
But the key is, like Mark and I were talking about earlier, is you've got to be making like you're halfway between a word. So you have to do this as you freeze. You got to go. So it looks like you were saying something and caught mid word.
It's pretty good, but it's very tough to do because you can pick up really quite small movements. We're going to have to send you to a body popping class so you can really practice the whole, really locking it down.
Just pop and lock
kind of thing.
Pop and lock. That's what it is.
Pop and lock. Get you popping and locking.
Goes with your hat.
Yeah, you got the hat.
You realize all four of us could go to the Olympics next year and win. We could just be 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was so bad.
Let's do it.
All right.
We should.
Yeah. Let's stop this behavior panel nonsense and become a crew.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the guy who stands around and goes, yeah.
Yeah, Greg will be the hype man. Greg will be the hype man.
I'm going to come over here.
If Scott left this in the episode and you're still stuck here, I'm sorry.
We admire
this is what happens when we're off camera, when we're not doing anything.
I wouldn't leave this in.